It all comes down to this, the finale, the final video to crown the best budget action cam at the $50 price point. The Apeman A77 versus the Crosstour CT8500. Since both of these cameras are pretty similar in terms of included accessories and build quality, we're going to put them side by side to compare video quality directly to see which one is the camera you should buy. Everything you see and hear in this video is shot by one of these two cameras or the comparison camera, the $100 Outtro V50 X. I'm using this camera as a comparison to show what you get by stepping up to the next level of budget action cam. At $100, there's substantially better image quality, better video quality, and better stabilization. I really do recommend stepping up to the $100 level as the image and video quality is substantially better, the stabilization is better, and overall the experience is better, especially with the touch screen. Thing is though, if you can put up with all of these other downsides, $50 cameras, they do turn on, they do film video, and their optimal resolution tends to be 1080p 30. So let's check out some video comparisons now, starting with 4K at 30 frames per second. In 4K 30, the Crosstour CT8500, it has a decent amount of detail, but it seems to be half frame rate. So it looks like every second frame is duplicated, and that can make things very wobbly and jittery in terms of video quality and performance. We've had Dragon Touch, we've had Cam Park, we've had Kuau, we've had other brands that I can't even remember now, but it all comes down to this. The last two remaining cameras, Crosstour CT8500 and Apeman A77. Let's see how they compare. We've had Dragon Touch, we've had Cam Park, we've had Kuau, we've had other brands that I can't even remember now, but it all comes down to this. The last two remaining cameras, Crosstour CT8500 and Apeman A77. The Apeman A77, on the other hand, offers real 4K at 30 frames per second. It's not the best 4K, mind you, there's no image stabilization whatsoever, and details are a little bit crunchy, but it is substantially better than anything that the Crosstour CT8500 offers. Same can be said for 1080p at 30 frames per second. Maybe not the best 1080p 30 ever, but still better than the Crosstour in terms of color performance and detail. Finally, we'll look at 1080p 60, and yeah, it's just not great. It's pretty typical of budget action cams. They focus on one or two resolutions to optimize and then just ignore everything else. The Crosstour CT8500 has blotchy and blocky 1080p 60, but it is a true 60 frames per second. And finally, 1080p 30. So now we're shooting at these cameras' optimal resolutions, which for the Apeman A77 and the Crosstour CT8500 is 1080p at 30 frames per second. I do have image stabilization turned on for the 8500 because that's probably the only thing that will push it over the edge versus the Apeman A77. Mind you, from my comparisons, the stabilization is just not very good. It does not do a very good job of counteracting bumps, jumps, jostles, that sort of thing. It does not do a very good job of counteracting bumps, jumps, jostles, that sort of thing. Like, let's switch over to the Outtro V50 X now, and thing is, right, you're almost better leaving it off in that instance because the stabilization causes like this wobbling around the edge of frame. Other cameras based on this similar hardware all have the same stabilization characteristics. Some are a little bit more zoomed in, do a little bit better job, but the reality is that CT8500's image stabilization is just not very effective. The A77, it tends to blow out highlights, tends to make skin too bright, tends to oversaturate color in an unrealistic manner, but I always like the way it looks better than the CT8500. It looks more vibrant and realistic, it'll look better on social media. Just have to put up with the fact that the Apeman A77, despite being advertised as having image stabilization, does not in fact have image stabilization. So the camera is best mounted to a tripod or a steady surface, or I guess handheld as long as you can hold the camera real still. Some other factors where I also prefer the Apeman A77, primarily user interface. The ease of use is a lot better, it's easier to access the menus are more clearly laid out and concise and easy to understand. You can see that image stabilization doesn't matter so much for framing shots like this when we're holding the camera perfectly still. But once we start rolling, once we get these handlebars shaking, it's just going to be very hard to watch the clip without any image stabilization. And I don't think the Kuau is going to do very well either, honestly. Just judging by the way it's mounted and stuff, I can hear it vibrating. Very good. Not very strongly mounted with handlebars. Well, I can hear it vibrating. It's not very strongly mounted to the handlebars. The image stabilization is not super effective, so I don't really expect much of it either. V50 Pro, vibrating. It's not very strongly mounted to the handlebars. The image stabilization is not super effective, so I don't really expect much of it either. V50 Pro. In these cameras' optimal resolutions, 1080p at 30 frames per second, I've also done a little bit of other tweaking just to make the video quality overall its maximum performance. I've set the sharpness in camera, I've turned down the exposure value so that they're not too bright and over contrasty. Reduced the contrast on the CT8500 as well, so black things are not like super deep washed out black. The end reality is that this is probably the best quality you will get out of these cameras, and that's just not great. Spending $100 on the Outtro V50 X nets substantially better video quality overall. As you can see, real 4K at 30 frames per second. The one thing that these two cameras do have going for them though is audio quality. As you've been hearing throughout this entire review, the audio quality from the two cameras is quite good, and the Crosstour CT8500 even includes an external microphone, so you can plug that in, get better audio quality in windy situations. So what's my conclusion then? The Crosstour CT8500 or the Apeman A77? Well, for me it's pretty obvious. The Apeman A77 is the clear winner because it has real 4K at 30 frames per second, the video quality is bright and vibrant and requires less editing, and overall the camera is easier to use. Thing is though, I would recommend in the Apeman A77 reducing the exposure by 2/3 or 1 stop just so that things are not as bright, not as overexposed. And that results in more detail, better quality overall. The Crosstour CT8500, even after adjustment, is still a little bit too blue, although the CT8500 does have better color balance than some other cameras based on the same hardware. Like, check this out, this is the Vantop Moment 4U, and this is the CT8500, and wow, the difference is substantial. Right now, neither of these cameras is available on Amazon because both of these brands were banned, both of them were caught faking reviews, but I have started to see Apeman cameras slowly starting to trickle back. So when this camera is available, I will provide a link to it. But honestly, if you can afford it, go for the $100 camera. The Outtro V50 X is an excellent option, albeit its audio quality is not very good. The Outtro V50 Pro is a decent balance between audio and video quality. And even the XTU S3 or XTU X1 that I've reviewed recently are great cameras. But if you can't afford that, the $100 camera is a very good option. It's kind of the way to go. And sometimes even those cameras like the Outtro V50 X do go on sale for $80. In that case, yeah, that is the camera to get.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What is this? Voiceover quality? Well, yeah, now I'm not recording with those cameras. I know that during the video I said I would do the whole thing with those cameras, but I just couldn't. I have a couple things that I need to mention at the end of the video here. First of all, I want to let you know what my intention with this video was. I wanted to go out in the real world, shoot a day with these cameras, see what I liked about them, how they were to use in the field, and most importantly, whether or not the video would turn out first try without reshooting. And that's the thing, I took a lot of footage for this review where I was just talking into the mic, rambling, kind of off topic honestly, but the vast majority of it did not turn out. I have tons of footage in the forest where I've got the cameras mounted to different parts of the bike, handlebars, helmet, handheld, all of those H words. But almost all of that footage is entirely useless, whether it's issues with the voiceover just because of the rattling from the handlebars, issues with stability because the cameras are too shaky, the image stabilization doesn't work. Sure, okay. Thing is, right, I said this in the video, these $50 cameras, they do turn on. They do shoot video. Sometimes it even looks good, But there's this big, huge thing where maybe 60-40 or 70-30, 70% of footage that I got with these cameras, I wasn't happy with. And I used to think that was just me being nitpicky, but recently I picked up the DJI Osmo Action, which is a $200 camera, 4 times the cost of these ones. But it really changed my perspective on how I want to test cameras, because the DJI Osmo Action, I pick it up, I go out and shoot, and everything just works. These two cameras, on the other hand, I always found myself futzing around with something, messing around with the menus, messing around with the mounts, and trying to get the audio right, trying to get the exposure right. And yeah, I look back on the computer and the video that I saw on the camera screen is nothing like what I see on the computer. So you can't even really set up the exposure and expect it to be similar to what you're seeing on the camera screen. Now you might say, oh, Jerky, you're being a bit too picky there. And yes, this is a cheap product, but it is cheap for a reason, and the experience is nothing even compared to a $100 action cam. A V50 X, for example, excellent video quality, somewhat subpar audio quality, but I'd rather have that any day over something like this. And also, yes, I am aware that the Apeman A77 has an issue with audio synchronization. I did not realize at the start of the video.
Here you can get a pretty good view of just how smoky it is today. Look at how hazy that background is. Normally you can see 2 or 3 ranges of mountains all the way out to the next city, basically. But today it's just smoke and fog and haze and nastiness.
But I still do stand by what I say. I like that camera more than the CT8500. I will put out a full review of at least the Apeman A77, where I'll dive more into the included accessories, the user interface, and some of the other things that I did not get to in these videos. So don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel to see that in the future. As well, I have noticed Apeman and Victure products starting to slowly trickle back into Amazon, so after those sellers have been banned, I guess they've opened up new accounts and are starting to sell these brands again. So I will put some links in the description if you use my Amazon affiliate link. The channel does get a small kickback. Otherwise, if you do want to directly support the channel, the best option is through Patreon. I try to put up some downloads there where you can get 10 seconds of raw footage from any of these cameras, then you can put them side by side on your own screen and see what they really look like without YouTube compression. As always, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.